The once mighty Michael Carter lay in a grand king-size bed that now felt like a prison. His body, once strong and commanding, had betrayed him. His legs were frail, his hands trembled, and even the simplest movements sent waves of exhaustion crashing through him. The empire he built, dozens of real estate ventures, high-profile investments, and a name that commanded respect in New York, meant nothing now. He was just a man waiting for the inevitable. Outside his bedroom, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoed through the mansion. His wife, Vanessa, was hosting yet another party. The perfume of expensive champagne and designer dresses filled the air while Michael lay alone, struggling to even lift a glass of water. It wasn't always like this. He once loved Vanessa, at least, he thought he did. She was stunning, the kind of woman who could make men turn their heads in admiration. But somewhere along the way, their marriage became less about love and more about status. As his body weakened, so did her patience. "Sir, let me help you with that," Emma Brooks said softly, stepping into the room. Emma had been his nurse for nearly 2 years. She was a simple woman, not interested in his wealth or reputation. Where Vanessa saw him as a burden, Emma saw him as a human being. She adjusted his pillows carefully, making sure he was comfortable before lifting the glass of water to his lips. "Thank you, Emma," Michael whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "You don't need to thank me," she replied with a gentle smile. "That's what I'm here for." But Michael knew better. She wasn't here just because it was her job. She cared. She listened. When the pain became unbearable, she didn't just give him medicine. She held his hand and reminded him that he wasn't alone. Vanessa never held his hand anymore. Michael turned his head slightly, watching the glow of the party lights flickering from the other side of the house. He could hear Vanessa's voice, high-pitched and full of forced excitement. He once adored that voice. Now it sounded hollow. "Emma," he said, his voice hoarse. She leaned in. "Yes, Mr. Carter." His tired eyes met hers. There was warmth in them, a quiet understanding that no words could express. "You're the only one who sees me," he murmured. Emma didn't respond immediately. Instead, she squeezed his frail hand gently. "I'm here, Mr. Carter," she said. "I see you." And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt something real, love, not for what he had, but for who he was. As the party raged on outside, he closed his eyes, realizing that in his final days, the only person who truly cared for him wasn't his wife at all. Michael Carter took his final breath in the quiet stillness of his bedroom. The world outside continued. Cars honked in the distance. The city moved at its relentless pace. But in that moment, time seemed to stop. His frail fingers curled weakly around Emma's hand, his once powerful grip reduced to nothing more than a whisper of a touch. Emma leaned in, fighting back tears as his lips parted one last time. "You deserve everything." The words barely made it past his lips before his chest fell still. No more labored breaths. No more pain. Just silence. Emma sat frozen, her hand still resting on his. The weight of his words settled deep in her heart. Days later, Michael's mansion was draped in black. The air smelled of expensive perfumes and fresh-cut flowers as New York's elite gathered for the reading of the will. The city's wealthiest socialites, business partners, and distant relatives filled the grand living room, murmuring in hushed tones. Vanessa arrived last, stepping out of a sleek black limousine, dressed in a custom-made designer dress. A diamond-studded veil covered her face, though no real tears had touched her eyes. She held her head high, exuding the elegance of a grieving widow, but inside, she was already planning. Michael was gone, but his fortune remained. As the lawyer, Mr. Donovan, took his seat, the room fell into an expectant hush. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and opened a thick envelope. "We are gathered here to hear the final wishes of Michael Carter," he began, his voice steady. "To my business associates and lifelong friends, I leave my appreciation and respect." A few polite nods. "To my extended family, I leave the funds necessary to ensure comfort and stability." Vanessa's red lips curled slightly. Any moment now, he would announce that the estate, her estate, belonged to her. "And finally," the lawyer continued, "regarding my personal fortune, properties, and entire estate, I leave everything, without exception, to Emma Brooks." The words sliced through the room like a blade. Silence. Then a sharp, high-pitched laugh broke the air of Vanessa's. It was short, bitter, and laced with disbelief. "I'm sorry," she scoffed, crossing her arms. "I must have misheard you." The lawyer remained unfazed. "You heard correctly. Michael Carter has left his entire estate to Ms. Emma Brooks." The murmurs turned into gasps. Someone dropped a glass. Vanessa's face twisted with fury. That's a lie," she shrieked, standing so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. This woman manipulated him. She's a gold digger and nobody. My husband would never do this to me." Emma sat still, stunned into silence. The lawyer calmly slid forward a document. Michael's will, signed and notarized months before his death. "This was his decision, Mrs. Carter," he said. "And it is final." Vanessa's manicured fingers curled into fists. "This isn't over," she hissed. She would fight this, whatever it took. Emma, meanwhile, could only stare at the papers in front of her, still hearing Michael's final words in her mind. "You deserve everything." And for the first time, she truly understood what he meant. Vanessa Carter was never one to accept defeat. She had spent years living in luxury, surrounded by wealth and power, and she refused to let it all slip away because of some nobody nurse. The morning after the will's shocking revelation, Vanessa stormed into the office of Richard Holloway, one of the most ruthless attorneys in New York. His reputation for destroying reputations preceded him, and Vanessa knew he was exactly what she needed. She manipulated him. Vanessa spat, her manicured nails digging into the leather armrest of her chair. "That woman brainwashed my husband in his weak estate. I want her ruined." Holloway leaned back, nodding slowly as he flipped through the will. "Elder abuse, coercion, fraud. We can make a case," he said smoothly. "It won't be easy." Michael's documents were solid, but with enough pressure, we can make this messy for her. A slow, satisfied smile spread across Vanessa's lips. Perfect. Within days, the scandal exploded across every major news outlet. Billionaire's fortune goes to his nurse. Wife left with nothing. Was Michael Carter manipulated? Grieving widow fights back. Gold digger or guardian angel. The Emma Brooks controversy. Reporters camped outside Emma's modest apartment, cameras flashing whenever she stepped outside. Paparazzi chased her through grocery store aisles, shoving microphones in her face. She had never wanted any of this. Meanwhile, Vanessa embarked on a public sympathy tour. She sat on morning talk shows, her voice trembling as she dabbed at imaginary tears. "I love my husband," she told the host, shaking her head. "We had our struggles, but we were building a future together. Then this woman swooped in and stole everything from me while he was too weak to know better." The audience gasped. The host leaned forward. "You truly believe she manipulated him?" Vanessa's eyes shimmered under the studio lights. "She took advantage of a dying man. And I won't stop until justice is served." The public was divided. Some believed Vanessa's sob story, picturing her as a grieving wife cruelly robbed of her husband's legacy. Others weren't so sure. After all, why would Michael choose Emma over the woman he married? But the worst part, Emma couldn't fight back. She had no powerful lawyers, no PR team, no media training. She barely left her apartment, too exhausted to face the cameras. She never wanted his money. She only wanted Michael to have peace in his final days. One night, after yet another news segment painted her as a manipulative gold digger, Emma sat at her kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. She thought about walking away. She thought about signing everything over to Vanessa just to make it stop. But then she remembered Michael's frail hand in hers, his final whisper, "You deserve everything." And suddenly she knew. She had to fight, not for the money, not for the mansion, but for the truth. This wasn't just about an inheritance anymore. It was about Michael's final choice, and she wouldn't let Vanessa erase it. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every camera rolling. The world was watching as Vanessa Carter versus Emma Brooks became the most talked about legal battle of the year. Vanessa arrived in a sleek black designer suit, her signature diamonds glittering under the harsh lights. She played the part of a grieving widow flawlessly, chin high, eyes glassy with convenient tears. Across the aisle, Emma sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. She didn't have expensive clothes or a team of high-powered attorneys, but she had the truth. And today, the truth was about to come out. Your Honor, we present new evidence, Emma's lawyer, David Larkin, announced as he approached the judge. He placed a thick envelope on the table. Inside were Michael Carter's personal letters and video recordings, documents that had been sealed away until now. The judge allowed the footage to play. The courtroom fell silent as Michael's weak but determined voice filled the room. The screen flickered to life, showing a frail but lucid Michael sitting in his study, his once powerful hands trembling as he spoke directly into the camera. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. Vanessa stiffened in her seat. 4 years, I convinced myself that Vanessa loved me, that what we had was real. But I was wrong. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. She only ever loved my money. She took everything from me, my trust, my dignity. And when I got sick, she abandoned me. Emma stared at the screen, eyes welling with tears. She hadn't known Michael recorded this. The only person who stood by me was Emma. His voice cracked, his gaze heavy with emotion. She didn't care about my bank account. She cared about me. That's why I'm leaving everything to her. It's the only decision I don't regret. Vanessa shot up from her seat. This is a lie. He was manipulated. Sit down, Mrs. Carter, the judge snapped, slamming the gavel. But it wasn't over. Larkin pulled out another document. Bank statements, secret records, private investigator reports. Your Honor, we also submit proof that Vanessa Carter has been cheating on her husband for years, while draining millions from his accounts to fund her lovers and reckless spending. The courtroom erupted. Reporters whispered furiously into their phones. A journalist in the back muttered, "This just turned into a scandal of the century." Vanessa's face went ghostly pale. Larkin turned to her with a smirk. "Tell me, Mrs. Carter, did you really think Michael didn't know? That he wasn't watching?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. The judge didn't need more time. The ruling was swift. The will stands. All assets remain in Emma Brooks' possession. Case dismissed. Vanessa's perfect world shattered. Her fortune gone. Her reputation ruined. The cameras flashed, capturing her humiliated expression as she stormed out of the courtroom. Meanwhile, Emma sat frozen in her seat. She had won. But more than that, Michael's truth had finally been heard. Vanessa Carter had spent her life chasing wealth, but now she had nothing. After the court's ruling, the high society friends who once clung to her like designer handbags vanished overnight. No more exclusive invitations. No more VIP treatment. No more money. The penthouse, sold. The luxury cars, repossessed. The designer wardrobe, auctioned off to pay legal fees. She tried to sue again, but no lawyer wanted to represent a woman whose dirty secrets had been exposed on national television. One by one, her lovers disappeared too. They had never loved her, only her wealth. And now that it was gone, so were they. Vanessa, once the queen of New York's elite, was left in the shadows, forgotten. Meanwhile, Emma Brooks had the entire world at her feet, but she never wanted power or riches. She donated most of Michael's fortune. Millions went to fund hospices and elderly care centers, places where people like Michael wouldn't have to suffer alone. She made sure every donation was anonymous. This wasn't about her, it was about honoring the man who had given her so much. She kept only enough to build a quiet life in a small town upstate, far from the flashing cameras and ugly whispers. A little house, a garden, a sense of peace. For the first time in years, she was truly free. One evening, under a soft golden sunset, Emma visited Michael's grave. She ran her fingers across the engraved letters of his name, the cool stone solid beneath her touch. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the faint scent of spring. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I never wanted your money," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know you weren't alone." The wind stirred, as if answering her, and for the first time Emma felt at peace. She had done right by Michael, and that was all that ever mattered.